Good afternoon. Welcome to the latest Straight Up Hangout. I'm Ben Fruzik from Barrel Strength Design, and this is a weekly event presented by Barrel Strength Design and Pixel Tonic. Today we have with us Brandon Kelly from Pixel Tonic, who's going to give us a tour or answer lots of questions about the new Craft 3 Dev Preview. And we also have with us Andrew Welch from NY Studio 107, freelancer Marian Nulavant, Selvin Ortiz from Kingdom Advisors, and Steve Adams from Pixel Jitsu. So, Craft 3 Dev Preview came out. This is a big milestone after a long silence from the Craft 3 branch after the initial Dev Preview came out. Congratulations on the release, Brandon. We hear it was an easy upgrade to get here.
Yeah, just clicking whole buttons in PHP Storm it for the rest. Yeah.
So there's a lot of big changes that we can discuss here. I thought we could start off with a few of the more broad questions, maybe the more user-facing questions, and then since it's a dev preview, dive more into developer-specific questions on how this is going to affect how we're writing code for Craft and all of that fun stuff.
Sure.
So I guess to start off, what's new in Craft 3 from the user's perspective?
From the user's perspective, basically nothing at this point. That's not to say there won't be more things that come down the road before we actually make it to beta and general availability and everything. But for now, like 99% of our focus has been on just improving the code base, primarily for ourselves and for plugin developers, and also with the end goal of improving performance as well. So, and making life easier for not just plugin developers but web developers as well. So, yeah, as far as like user-facing features go, one thing that comes to mind is it depends on who you mean by users, but if you're talking about like the actual web developers that are setting things up, you've now got the option to store your assets on more places. So right now, we still have the built-in S3 and Rackspace and Google Cloud options, but we've kind of opened that whole thing up to plugin developers to add new custom asset sources, or we're actually renaming them to volumes, so asset volumes. And we've got fly system in there, so if you wanted to hook it up to a zip file, you could do that. If you wanted to hook it up to something over FTP, you could do that. It's just basically really, really easy to connect it to lots of different things. And then beyond that, we've also included what's called the Yi Debug Toolbar, which is a really, really handy way to see what's going on within any given request if you're trying to debug something, or just diagnose why something's taking so long performance-wise, and all these different types of things. So
what changes from? I guess we have a dev mode right now that dumps a bunch of information for us. What does the Yi Debug Toolbar add?
I could show it to you real quick. I've actually got a Craft 3 site I've been running if you want me to.
So how do you get it? Just turning dev mode on gives you that toolbar?
You don't even need dev mode, actually. This is something that works outside, like in production environments as well.
Oh.
So let me set that up real quick.
Great. And if anybody out there in the audience has any questions during the Hangout, feel free to click on there's a overlay. You can refresh your screen if you don't see it. There's an overlay on the Hangout you can click on to log in and post questions. We'll try to work them in as we can.
Hey, Brandon,
Yeah.
I think that when Ben said users, I was kind of thinking from the content administrator perspective.
There's nothing to report there right now.
That's okay.
The actual content administration perspective is 100% identical right now.
Okay.
Maybe the biggest item there to mention is there's higher requirements to even install and use Craft. So I don't know if it would be the end user, but a client might have to be ensuring their hosting and PHP version are a little bit higher than what they are required to have now.
Yeah. So I think when we first released the dev preview a year ago, we were saying it was going to require 5.4, PHP 5.4. because that's what Ye2 requires, as well as like basically like every dependency is kind of starting to go in that direction. Ye 2.1 is going to require PHP 5.6, which is actually in line with what a lot of other dependencies like Guzzle and things are going with as well. And it just kind of makes sense from the fact that PHP 5.4 isn't even supported anymore, nor is 5.5, I think. So it just kind of makes sense to like let's set the minimum requirement to be like a supported version of PHP. And then in addition to that, we're requiring MySQL 5.5 as well now, which is pretty standard from what we can tell on most modern hosting environments. So that shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, you're right. 5.5, the support ended July 10th.
On PHP, yeah.
Yeah, 5.5. Yep.
That sounds right.
Great.
So
July 10th of this year. Sorry, I should have said that.
So debug toolbar. So basically, like regardless of whether you are running locally or on production, whether dev mode's enabled or not, doesn't really matter anymore. You have these two different checkboxes in your user account, and this is only available to admins. You can basically decide whether you want to show the debug toolbar on the front end, and then separately if you want it to be shown in the control panel. So kind of depending on whether you're trying to debug front-end requests, like you're actually building a site, or you're working on a plugin, you can kind of take your pick. So I'll just enable it both places, save it. You can see now down at the bottom of the screen, there's this nice debug toolbar. So if I go to the front end, there it is as well there. And it kind of gives you some handy stats just right here. So it's telling me that I'm on Craft 3.0.1, tells me my PHP version, the status of the request, the route that was used to render the request, how many things got logged in the request, and that number will vary depending on whether dev mode is enabled or not. Whether there were any deprecation errors that were logged in the request, how long it took, how much memory it consumed, and also how many database queries and how long those took as well. And then you can drill into any one of these if you want. So if you want to kind of get an idea of what was going on database-wise, you just click that, and this nice thing scrolls up, and it actually shows you a list of all the different database queries that were used to render the current request, how long each of them took, all that kind of stuff. And then you can kind of flip around from here, so you can go view more detail on the info, more detail on like the basic request parameters and stuff. This is pretty similar to what you would see in Prep 2 with dev mode enabled. Any logs that were logged during the request, deprecation errors. If you want to quickly like go through your site and find any deprecation errors and fix those, here's your deprecation log for the current request as well as all of them that we've got stored in the database. And then profiling is like where you'll probably be spending a lot of time because that kind of drills down, you know, on the kind of a hierarchical level. Like here's the different processes that took place and how long each of them took. And you can organize, or you can, you know, sort that by the duration of the process and kind of see, like, oh, it looks like a ton of time was spent on, you know, X, Y, or Z. So that's really, really nice for just trying to, you know, do the same types of things we were using dev mode 4 and Prep 2, and now you can even do it in production environments. So that's going to be really nice.
Yeah.
Quick question on the queries, Brandon. Are those queries? Do they have the bindings resolved? Like, are you able to see the values that were bound in the queries?
Yeah, let's see. Looks like they're already injected in there.
Okay, cool. That's
Yeah.
really helpful. That's really helpful to be able to see what, you know, especially if you're doing like search on a field or something. That's really cool to see.
I might have just lied. That's kind of hard to tell. I'm looking at like these queries are huge. Let's see if there's anything smaller. Yeah, it looks like they are because like this is the type of scenario where this would like this number 1 right here would have been bound
Yeah.
in. So
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of ID or whatever. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, anyways.
It's nice to see the tools we spend 80% of our time with while building websites improving.
Yeah. And you can even, if you want it running, but you don't really care about it on every request, you can even kind of flip it over to the side of the monitor or side of the window. So it's not taking up so much of your browser space all the time.
Nice.
Does Does Craft 3 now or in the future provide a way or an API for plugins to sort of output stuff into either of those sections to log some stuff specific to the plugin, or not really necessary?
So right now it's possible, but it requires some work beyond. Well, actually, I'm not entirely sure. I have to play around with it because it's like
Okay.
the way that you actually configure this is just in the main application config. So like this is getting kind of Yi specific, but like every Yi application has a master application config file. And in there, you can kind of specify which modules should be included and what point to the classes and give them a handle, basically. So in our application config, we're including the debug toolbar, and while we're doing that, we're also specifying the specific panels we want to show, and a couple of those are custom. So like the deprecation errors is custom, and the info one is custom. And we've kind of hidden a couple of the default panels. So theoretically, I guess a plugin, like when it's initializing itself, could probably jump in and try and inject a couple others. I think that the correct way to do it from the modules perspective would be that the developer would just kind of override the config on which modules should show or which panels should show up and include plugins panels there themselves. But I don't know. We'll have to look into that.
So a simple use case might be, you know how you have my plugin dot log or whatever that it's going to write to the file. I think that if you could enable something to actually display it on the console or in some sort of area there as you're testing things out, that might be really useful too, because it might give you kind of like you wouldn't have to change anything. You might just be able to say, log something. Or is that already happening? Like
probably is already happening. I think
okay.
they come into the logs, and you can probably search by plugin category. Like, type the plugin's name as the category, and it'll probably show up.
Okay.
But yeah,
as soon as they start porting commerce over, it'll happen.
Yeah. Well, we're still getting used to all this stuff, so I'm not entirely sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump into too much dev stuff, let's zoom out a quick moment and try. Maybe we could answer some questions that probably a lot of people just would like to know about Craft 3. So, Craft 3 is out, or it's coming out. It's in beta right now, I guess. It's a dev preview.
Yeah, not even beta yet.
And I'm assuming there's no answer to a lot of these questions, but I'm just going to ask them and get your version of what's going on right now. Is there a release date? Can we expect a plugin store in Craft 3? What else?
Let's take them one at a time.
Shotgun style.
We can't tell you that because we don't know. The original release date is December of 2015. Was when the beta was supposed to come out, and that kind of came and went. So, we basically, as far as that goes, by the way, quick tangent, the original intention was, when we were first doing all this stuff, was like, let's try and get a beta out by the end of the year, and this was, over a year ago now. And then we basically ended up just getting totally sidetracked. So, apparently we lack any sort of, like, responsibility when it comes to sticking with what we said development-wise. So we got Commerce, and when we bought Commerce and decided to do that whole thing, we thought we were much closer to 1.0 than we actually were. And so as that took longer, the amount of things that we were doing in Craft 2.5 continued to increase as well. Like, just kind of basically as long as it took to get to Commerce 1.0, we were just doing new cool stuff for Craft 2.5 as well. And so the scope just got way out of hand, and then we ended up needing to do a couple more things for Craft 2.6, especially when it comes to like e-reloading and stuff like that. So all these things kind of got away from us, and then we kind of realized early this year, like, oh crap, now we got to port all this back to Craft 3 because those code bases are like completely diverged. So we had to spend like the last 5 months basically doing nothing but porting things from Craft 2 back to Craft 3. So that's why in the thing we were saying, like, there's probably not going to be 2.7. So now we are like very much focused on, like, let's just make Craft 3 our #1 priority. We want to get that out as soon as possible. So we're definitely it's going to happen as soon as possible, and you'll see a lot more activity on dev preview than you will on anything else that we're doing for the remainder of Craft 3 development. And so, like, I can tell you, I hope we get a beta out by the end of the year. Because we're kind of at the same point we were last year when we were thinking we'd have a beta out by the end of last year. And the scope has increased too much since then. So we're really hoping to get a beta out by the end of the year. And at that point, we should have a much better idea of how much it's actually going to take to get from there to the GA release. And the biggest thing that's going to happen between the beta and the GA is, yes, we are going to work on a plugin store. That's the time we're going to do it. So basically, at the same time that everyone else is working on porting their plugins over and getting used to Craft 3 and helping us find any remaining bugs and all that kind of thing, during that same amount of time, we'll be working on getting a plugin store built. We've actually already been planning or spending a lot of time kind of figuring out how that's going to work. And then kind of the grand vision is that on the day that Craft 3 comes out, so will the plugin store. And the plugin store is going to kind of act like a carrot, I guess, for plugin developers. We're hoping that being part of the plugin store is going to be a major motivation factor in getting off their butts and actually porting all their code. So we'll see how it plays out, but that's kind of the hope.
Great. And so when Craft 3, when we reach this time, how are you approaching Craft Commerce, and how should plugin developers who also have plugins that they want to be porting to Craft 3 expect to be communicating with you? Are you helping folks?
Yeah, we will. Craft Commerce is just going to be built sometime in there. Luke's still working on Commerce 1.2 release, but as soon as that's done, his next thing is going to be porting it over to Craft 3. So we definitely expect Commerce to be ready no later than the day that the plugin store goes live and Craft 3 goes live and all that kind of stuff. If we can get a beta out of it earlier than that, then we will. Yeah. And yeah, we'll be doing everything we can to help plugin developers hold their hands as they're learning Craft 3 and everything. So.
Great. Any other upfront questions we want to ask about the platform?
I think the upgrade path for not plugins necessarily, just I think that you alluded to this, back in the first dev preview like a year ago or whatever, that it was going to be as far as upgrading from Craft 2 to Craft 3 was either going to be like breaking changes, so you wouldn't be able to, or at least with plugins. So can you give us kind of a summary of the upgrade path?
Yeah, so the bulk of the breaking changes are facing just plugins. So there's just a lot of things under the hood that have changed to the point where trying to make it backwards compatible would be a very bad decision. So for plugin developers specifically, they're just going to have to, kind of go through all this, renaming and all this kind of stuff we've been doing. For front-end code, for actual websites, if you have a craft site that doesn't have any plugins or all the plugins have already been ported, we're making that as straightforward as possible. There's still probably going to be a little bit of work. So if you've got custom translation files, for example, if you're doing any static translations, the format of how you save those files is a little bit different. Not the actual PHP code itself, but where the PHP code where that file lives. Right now, it might be craft/translation/en_us.php, and
Okay.
Craft 3 it would be something like craft/translation/en/us/ I forget en/enus.php. I forget the exact syntax, but that's slightly different. And then as far as actual template code goes, 99.999% of it should still work. So unless you're doing something really fringe, you won't have to worry about any breaking changes. However, we have deprecated a number of things, not in kind of the core APIs, but if you're doing anything that's kind of control panel-y, let's say you're looping through field groups or doing any of those kind of less popular sub tags of that's a craft variable. They'll still work for craft 3, but they've all been deprecated. And the reason for that is that now we've got this craft.app variable, which actually points to the main application object in craft. So the exact same thing that basically every other service and all that kind of stuff comes out of for PHP code. Templates have the same access now. So
Wait, so the from Twig you can actually call a service method?
exactly, yeah. So you just in the same way that in PHP you would do craft.app.sections.getAllSections or whatever. Now you do literally the exact same code in Twig, just with Twig syntax instead of PHP.
And theoretically, you would be able to get to your own plugin services by doing something like craft.app. Whatever service name or no?
No, only because in Craft 3 plugins don't add services to Craft's own application.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
you still have to like get to the plugin. So craft.app. Get plugin and then pass in a plugin handle and then go from there.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like the specifics of how all this works, like whether plugins should be allowed to add additional components to craft.app or things like that, like we're not really sure what the right convention should be for that. Like it's not technically impossible. Like a plugin could just go in and say like craft.app.register new component, and, define it themselves. So there's nothing stopping them from doing that. The question is whether that's a good idea or not, and we'll have to kind of figure that out.
And Stelvin, to speak to what you were mentioning about plugins just a little bit, the plugin factory.io site that I have that generates plugin frameworks, I plan to have that generating some experimental Craft 3 plugins by this weekend. And I've been playing around with the idea of a plugin converter that would just do the deterministic renaming of things like the namespacing and the plugin class and stuff like that. It wouldn't, it's not going to magically convert a plugin, but it would do some of the drudgery work, and then you go in and fix whatever else you need to fix. So, no promises, but I'm giving that a shot too.
I think you've been thinking about that since Piers in 2015.
Well, that just means I've had a long time to really, really come up with a great way to do it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I did a Craft 3 plugin dev workshop, and you were asking about that.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be really awesome. And so we've converted. We found any opportunity we could when we were first converting everything to E2. We found every opportunity we could to automate existing code. So it's all very craft specific, but we have written a lot of scripts that like load up all the old models and kind of parse through things and dump out Craft 3 compatible models and stuff like that.
Kind of like look through the defined attributes and make
it
the
would
properties of the model.
actually run in the context of Craft 2, so it would load up the model class, and through a combination of just reading the properties of the model as well as like doing some reflection on the classes and stuff like that. We were able to kind of reconstruct here's what this should have looked like if it was written in Craft 3.
If you're going to do it, I'd much rather have you guys do it.
Well, I think we did it for ourselves. Whether we find a way to do it more abstractly or not, like we'll have to see.
Well, maybe.
But at the very least, I can share you the scripts if you want to take a look at them.
And maybe put it on a repo somewhere, and then Andrew and I can kind of take a look at it as well as anybody that wants to. And
that's doable.
Because I already have some work done on Craft 3 APIs, but I don't know if you remember when I was porting Patrol, I was also building a bunch of other plugins, testing everything, and the biggest challenge that I came against was resources, how resources being resolved, but we don't have to get into that right now. I'm going to kind of go back to what the initial question was of the upgrade path. So basically, if you have a Craft 2 site that has no plugins, you're probably going to be able to upgrade no problem, because there isn't.
Any work you will have to do should be very, very quick. Shouldn't take it.
And Steve Adams, who is in the chat, asked, what happens if the upgrade from 2 to 3 and there's a custom field type provided by a plugin that is not ported to Craft 3? Like, what happens to the data that was in the custom plugin field type?
So for now, you'll basically just get like an error saying this field, or when you're viewing, it'd actually be the same as right now. If you have a custom field type and then you just delete the class, or delete PHP code or whatever, in the edit page, you'll just get like this red warning sign saying like, this
Yeah, it's like when you uninstall the plugin.
Well, when you uninstall, you remove the data, though.
Well, okay, I've had it happen. Well, okay, so you delete the plugin.
Yeah, you just delete the plugin files, so all the data is the same. You just can't resolve the class name.
So the data will be there for when the
cards against that, both in Craft 2 and Craft 3.
And the next version of the plugin can migrate the plugin if it needs to.
Okay. So the data will be there for the new plugin whenever that ends up happening.
Yeah, I mean, like, we want to think about it a little bit more and see if there's a better way, or if there's a way we can kind of show you, like, when you're preparing to upgrade to Craft 3, like, here's your report of, which plugins you're using and which ones have already been ported, and kind of give you that heads up before you even get down this path.
That would be really nice.
Yeah, and so that's definitely something we want to do. And then if we can do anything beyond that to facilitate the actual data migration, that would be nice. Like, it'd be nice to be able to just, have some Craft 3 updater that, already grabs all the plugins that you need, the Craft 3 versions of them, and, knows what migrations they need to run to get the data up to date and all that kind of stuff.
That would be really cool.
But yeah, I mean,
that would be hard unless the plugin store.
The plugin store would be involved. I mean, basically, like when you're submitting a plugin to the plugin store, like you'd have to like say, I mean, here's the handle of the plugin I had in Craft 2, and I don't know. Well, we'll play around with it.
We hope to add a flag up on Straight Up Craft if a plugin developer wants to kind of pledge they're going to update their plugin to Craft 3 or not, and try to give a little early signal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly not too worried about it. If a crucial plugin is not going to be ported, then actually it would be kind of nice from the way as a way to communicate that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's all too early. Like I think once we get to the data, that's when we'll really start to worry about all this stuff.
Just have it open an issue on GitHub automatically.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like Craft is new enough, and all the plugin developers are pretty much still with the platform, so I don't see it being a huge issue. And we'll definitely be available to lend a hand, and we're partially responsible for this mess in the first place, so.
That's an interesting idea, Steve. If it opened up an issue on GitHub, and then every person that tried to upgrade to Craft 3 had added a comment. It would give people a pretty good idea of how many people really wanted them to update that plugin.
Yeah, maybe facilitate some kind of tip jar thing.
So now we can dive into plugin stuff then, Ben?
Yeah, I think that's the.
Well, so it's possibly more relevant to most people, because plugins honestly haven't changed enough to really talk much about, unless you have something specific you want to talk about, Selden.
My curiosity about plugins is, how are we going to tell the Craft 3 ones apart from the Craft 2 ones? Are people going to use like a different branch in Git, or is there any convention for that? Obviously, eventually they'll end up in the plugin store, but there's going to be some overlap period there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, for us, I'm not really sure if it would be better to do as a different branch or a completely separate GitHub repo. We definitely see the bulk of the distribution happening through the plugin store, so I don't think this is much of an issue for end users or end developers, as much as just for plugin developers, how are we going to organize our code around this?
I'm just hoping some convention arises.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going to be. I don't think that we're going to see any plugins that are packaged of Craft 2 and Craft 3 compatible versions together, because there's just could be a completely separate set of files. There just wouldn't be any point to it.
How long do you plan to support Craft 2 before deprecating it after Craft 3?
Right now, we're kind of just thinking that the day Craft 3 goes live, that's the new thing. So, I mean, we'll keep, if a major security vulnerability comes up or something, then yeah, we'll address it. But like, we won't be taking any new feature requests. Bug report, depending on how severe it is, may or may not warrant a build update or not. But as far as like what we're expecting new sites to be using, what we're expecting, like we're going to do everything we can between the day that the beta goes live and the day the general availability of Craft 3 comes out. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that like the day that 3.0 officially comes out, 99% of people will be able to update to it.
I don't think so. I don't think that percentage is accurate. I think it's probably going to be closer to like 75 or 80% of people that are going to be able
Based
to.
on plugins, or I mean, there's obviously like there's
Yeah.
internal plugins that people aren't sharing with us that we can't do anything about.
Right.
But in that case, like they're not really supporting other people anyways. They're just supporting themselves. In terms of sites that are using off-the-shelf plugins that other plugin developers are supporting, we're going to do everything we can to to get those plugins up to date with Craft 3 and make sure that people have a smooth upgrade path. So.
And how will you handle once Craft 3 goes live? How will you handle support requests for Craft 2? You're just gonna basically look at, is it a security bug?
If it's just a basic usage question, we'll be able to answer it. If it's more of like I need a certain feature, the answer is going to be update Craft 3.
Sure.
We'll talk about it there.
Right.
Like again, like basically it's going to go down to like life support mode only the day that Craft 3 comes out. So if a major security vulnerability is released, or a very major bug, like then those would warrant a build update for Craft 2. But anything less than that, like we would just expect people to start moving to Craft 3.
I'm curious as to what features you're going to change in the core that you can talk about. For example, like say I use Pimp My Matrix a lot. If there's a feature in the core for that, will I still be able to use the plug? I mean, is there going to be a replication of functionality where a plugin is there for compatibility, but it's kind of doing that in the core a different way now?
So again, like the focus of Craft 3 is mostly just back-end changes. We don't currently have any plans to add any new features that would replicate existing plugin functionality. I'll say that. We do have plans for a couple new features, but they are not addressed by plugins at the moment.
Okay.
Now, do you think that for the smaller percentage of people that may not be able to upgrade to Craft 3 when it comes out, because I think that there will be some people that just won't be able to make the move, and I think in some sites that I've audited, there are over 80 plugins, like 80 plugins installed on a site, average of 30, like really, and those are not the only people that may not be able to upgrade. There are some people that have been pretty slow at upgrading, thinking in terms of PCI compliance and other things. There are some situations that make it a little harder. Some companies don't have the manpower. Would it be reasonable, or would you think about providing 1 year of support with some sort of fee attached to that for people that were?
Again, we're not saying we won't support it.
Sure.
We'll still support it. We're just not going to be actively developing it anymore.
Right. No, and that's fine.
So
it's kind of like a long.
If someone's stuck on Craft 2 because they've written 4,000 lines of custom plugin code and they just don't have the budget to update that code to Craft 3, that's fine. They can stay on Craft 2 as long as it takes for them to find that budget. And we'll still help them. Like I don't know. Like we'll see when we get there. But like the idea of setting like an end of life, like we're no longer supporting Craft 2 at this date, like seems way too big business for Pixel and Tonic. Like we're not. I imagine that like after a year, we're not going to really see any of those support requests anymore. Anyways, we'll just play it by ear.
Right.
If we're still getting a ton of Craft 2 support requests and we know that our life would be ridiculously easier if everyone were just to upgrade, then maybe we have to have that conversation. Like, okay, let's set an end-of-life date. Tell everyone, okay, the writing's on the wall. You have to move off after this date if you want to help. But I don't see that happening. Like, we're not, we're a small little business. We don't have millions of customers we need to worry about. So.
You will though. In 2016, you probably will have. In 2017, you'll probably have millions. But
It would
anyway,
take, it would take many exponents to do it.
so the thing about it is that it's good for us developers to be able to advise our clients on what we think a right move is, because if you need to spend $20,000 on an upgrade, versus trying to make it through another year until you do a whole redesign or something, it might be worth it. So if they can still kind of reach out with questions, like not questions necessarily, but issues, like there's some sort of injection security bug in the templating or something like that for whatever reason, you'll still be able to help them out and patch it if you need to, because it's not a new feature, it's just really fixing.
Right.
Gotcha.
So again, for example, like Craft 1 to 2, I think we immediately just expected everyone to move to Craft 2.
Yep.
But that was because there were no breaking changes. So there were, but it was like extremely minor and wasn't relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, for this one, I mean, if there's a security vulnerability that comes out, again, we will definitely patch it, and we'll work through. Like, we'll still support it from that regards. Unless we get to a point where it's like, okay, people should
too much.
move on now. But
okay,
we can
I think that makes sense.
doing another hangout on kind of business planning around upgrading and stuff too. I think there's a lot of sites in this tricky situation there around budgets and stuff.
Yeah.
But let's keep moving on Craft 3 here, and I think we have a lot more to cover. So.
Just one quick point on that. I mean, Selvin. Really, how easy the upgrade is really going to be a big factor in the adoption rate, right? So that's Pixel and Tonic's job to make that upgrade easy, and then it's our job as plugin developers to make the upgrade for our plugins easy. And assuming we do those two things, if the barrier of entry to upgrading from Craft 2x to 3x is very low. I mean, if it's safe and it works easily. I don't think we're going to need $20,000 budgets to upgrade, but it really all depends on how that process kind of breaks down in the real world.
Yeah, and we'll have a much better idea about that as well once we've gotten around to porting commerce. Right now, all of the porting code we've done has been kind of a combination of porting it and also like trying to establish conventions, and like the amount of time that goes into establishing conventions is way longer than just like, okay, they exist now, so this is a much more or less straightforward task. So by the time we actually get around to porting commerce, the conventions will be established, and it'll be much more of just straightforward, like, okay, now let's port all this code. And, if there's opportunities for automating part of that, those will rise up, and we'll see. Yeah.
So I do have a plugin developer-related question for you, Brandon, if it's an appropriate time to do that. So a number of people that I know are considering actually selling their plugins in the plugin store when it comes out. Right? Now, they also want their plugins to be ready to go and tested prior to that happening. What do you think would be a good methodology for them to use? They got a plugin, they want to port it to Craft 3, they want people to be able to test it and use it, but they're planning to sell it, so maybe they don't want it publicly on GitHub, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like last time, I think last time, Brandon, you said that there might have been, like you were going to implement some sort of trial for the plugins, and the other thing that I remember was some sort of test suite that can automatically run on plugins. I think that touches on 2 points, but I don't know if that...
Yeah, that's kind of the test suite is similar to what Andrew's saying, but as far as trials go, the only idea we currently have is maybe requiring that all plugins kind of go with the same trial situation Craft itself has, where like just let people, if you're going to put it on the plugin store, you have to be okay with people using it for free as long as it's on local, a local box or something like that.
Yeah, which sounds great.
Yeah, which actually, like, we didn't do for Craft Commerce, ironically, but we've kind of realized since then, like, we should have. So Commerce 1.2 probably will go with more of the same, like, switch out the licensing verification stuff, and with just, like, if you're running on craft.dev or some other non-public domain, then you can use all the features, including transactions,
I think that's a great way to do it, rather than having all the
Yeah.
various plugin developers trying to decide what features should I disable,
Yeah, just
yada, yada,
basically
yada.
like, yeah, I mean, like, I'll just say it's been incredibly successful for us
Yep.
as a strategy for giving people a way to try craft for free. Is just say, okay, as long as you're using it locally or, on some like dev.whatever.com or anything that like kind of points to it not being the live site,
Yep.
they can use it for free and do all the features and try it as long as they want. And then when they're ready to make a purchase decision, they can.
I think from an adoption point of view, that's a great idea.
It's great from both kind of a trial alternative, or a way to do a trial, as well as just from a like management standpoint. I can't tell you the last time we've had to issue a refund. Like that's just not something we ever do. And it's not that we don't accept refunds. Like if someone bought something and just realized they made the wrong decision, we would totally issue them one. But the way that we're charging, no one's really buying anything until they've built the site already.
Right.
And at that point, there's not really any going back. So it just doesn't happen. And I think that most plugin developers would not mind doing the same kind of thing.
Your merchant processor must love you.
What's that?
Your merchant processor must love you.
No, they don't actually.
They should. Your chargeback rate is almost
because everyone uses business Amex cards.
Ah, okay.
So Stripe told us they're actually losing money on us. so we don't.
That's their business model flaw.
Yeah, but anyways, we'll just if we have any opinion on that right now, it's that we should probably just do the same thing we do with Craft. And as far as testing goes, that's a whole other thing that this is more Brad's territory, but Craft 3 plugins are going to be much more testable than they are in Craft 2, and a lot of that has to do with just V2 being much more testable and having better built-in frameworks for that.
Now, I think that the testing that I was referring to, obviously, I'm definitely interested in the PHP unit testing and that sort of thing. But I think that at some point you mentioned that the plugin store itself would have some sort of, simple tests to validate the submission.
That's a idea, but we want to do some sort of continuous integration thing where it actually, installs
runs your tests or whatever
into some new Docker container or something like that.
Gotcha.
Run tests in there and verify that at least nothing in Craft itself is broken now, and also verify that the plugins tests, if they have any, are all working.
Gotcha.
But I mean, no promises there. If it happens, it probably wouldn't be part of the version 1.
Okay.
So yeah. Anything else?
So do we want to just, I think we're diving into plugins, which I think there's simpler things to dive into first, but if we're on the topic of plugins, why don't we keep on it? And I think let's zoom out and just ask the question, for developers moving to Craft 3 wanting to learn plugins, what resources are out there for us right now to do so? And do you guys expect to be posting more documentation on it? And how soon do you think you're going to be sure about the APIs that we're using?
Yeah, we're not going to be putting any time into official documentation or plugin resources until we've either gotten close to or gotten to the beta. Because until then, literally everything is up for debate. So basically, right now, the purpose of the dev preview is for plugin developers that are really curious about how things are working now and want to look into Craft's own code base and kind of use that as their guide for building plugins, but also just as kind of a way to kind of give us feedback on whether they think we're doing things right or wrong. That's kind of the feedback we're looking for. We're looking for people that are willing to do that. Because right now, we mentioned earlier, like plugins being able to add new components to Craft app. I don't know what the right answer to that is yet. I know right now we basically said that's not possible, but that's more just because we're not sure if it should be or not, so we'd rather be on the side of not doing it. But if we want to get the feedback, with people actually trying it out, you know what, this actually is kind of a pain in the ass the way it works right now, and here's a better option. We're looking for that kind of feedback.
So basically, from an API point of view, don't expect it stabilized until beta, and the whole point.
The point of beta will be for us to now announce, like, you know what, things are stable now. Like, now we're just about fixing bugs, but we're happy with all the API changes and all that stuff.
So if we as plugin developers want a chance to mold the API or make it better for us, now is the time to start doing stuff and giving feedback. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And what channels should we be giving feedback through?
The best one so far has been just the Craft 3 channel in CraftStack.
Okay.
And so that's not one you're added to automatically. You actually have to explicitly add yourself to it. But that's, I'm monitoring that every day, and that's anytime that there has been a good discussion so far, it's gone in there. There is a Craft 3 specific forum on feedback.craftscms.com, which people submitted some bugs to and stuff like that. But that doesn't really work out too well as like a way to give like suggestion, like feedbacks beyond a bug report kind of thing. Like anything that warrants a discussion, it's really better just doing it in CraftStack on the Craft 3 channel. Yeah.
All right. And are there, so then diving into the plugins, I think a few things have changed about them. I believe there's also a Majingo tutorial by Ben Croker that talks about Craft 3 plugin development if you're looking to get started with this stuff. He goes through
maybe slightly dated.
Might be. What's that?
Like, well, maybe slightly dated. Like the config.json is now a plugin.json and a couple other minor things.
Yeah. So.
You can thank Selvin for that.
What?
I think Selvin, you're the one that pointed out, if I remember correctly, that there's also a config.php if you want to supply like default config values.
Oh, right. What was
So
that?
It's kind of awkward that you have this config.php and a config.json. And,
Thanks, Selvin.
yeah.
Right.
No, it's actually an area we want to go back into.
Wait. Did I suggest that we have both in the same file?
No, you pointed out the awkwardness of it.
Okay.
Before yesterday, the situation.
Because Andrew it's kind of saying thanks, but in a very Andrew way. So I gotta stop him on his tracks, man.
No. I'm joking, obviously, but I'm saying that because what is in that video from Ben Crocker is not correct now, because it's changed from config.json to plugin.json.
Yeah.
Which I agree is a better change, so I was just having fun with yourself.
Cool.
There's Jason McAllister's asking a question.
Yeah, I was trying to get to that on kind of, so now we have plugins that are slightly different structure. Brandon, Jason's question is, any thoughts on the structure for Craft plugins in the store? Keeping my code in a repo with the my plugin handle. Okay, so this is more of a store question. And how we're structuring our plugins.
Yeah, I guess the answer to that is we haven't thought about it yet. So,
right.
I don't know. Like, basically, like right now, most plugins will have their repo, and they'll have like a README file in the repo, and then they'll have like a my plugin. They'll have a folder inside the repo that is the one that's actually meant to be dragged into the plugins folder.
So you're going to have a private Git server then?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to have a private Git server then?
For the plugin store?
Yeah.
I was just describing how things work now.
Okay.
And so, like, basically, because if you download a plugin on GitHub as a zip, it's going to, like, rename the root folder, and it's going to give it some weird,
master. Yeah.
So rather than saying, like, the first step is to rename the top-level folder you just downloaded and then drag it into plugins, it's just easier to say drag the subfolder of the repo into the plugins folder. Plugin store is not gonna matter. Plugin store is gonna, automate the installation of plugins and all that kind of stuff. So, like, whatever we decide, like, it's not gonna matter anymore. It's like, at least as far as like the experience of actually installing a plugin. It'll just be click a button and now you have it.
What kind of licensing are you going to have with the plugins? Are they going to be just outright purchases, or can you do recurring yearly licenses on a plugin?
Yeah. We haven't discussed that at length, but it does seem like the subscription model would be at least a good option to give plugin developers. We'll have to kind of think about it, but definitely the way things are going software sales wise is more subscription. So for plugin, at least for plugins where it makes sense, like they might want to be able to do that. So something we'll have to look into.
No, obviously this is asking a lot, but would there ever be some support for donation of some kind? Like if somebody wants, like
Maybe
yeah, like
order.
somebody wants to, hey, I want to donate $20 to this plugin developer through the craft store, through the plugin store.
Probably not. That seems awkward. Like if I went to Best Buy and they were giving away free samples of a CD or something, like I wouldn't expect them to also give me the option to I don't know.
That's weird.
Like it's easy enough for the developer to to spin up their own. I don't know. Like it's not a bad idea to like if we're gonna let them choose their method, their payment strategy. If they want to say it's a one-time payment or it's a subscription payment or something like that, like maybe a third option would be instant donationware and just give people the ability to kind of.
I mean, you can still take a cut. I mean, if someone donates $20, you could still take $2 or $3 or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
because the thing is, it might be a way to keep the cost down. I've talked to a lot of different developers that are thinking about going from open source into a commercial license, which is fine. I mean, we got to make some money somewhere, especially for those plugins that have proven to be very, should I say, not popular, but almost like necessary for every build.
Yeah.
If every build is going to require a specific plugin, and that plugin goes from costing $0 to $99, or even if it was just like $50, it can add up through the upgrade.
Yeah.
So, and I think as plugin developers, we're going to be spending a little bit of time trying to make the upgrade. So I think obviously, if you haven't really thought about it, like we're not thinking it's going to be part of the plugin store donations, but it might be a way to sort of.
Well, it sounds like from the setup that Brandon was discussing that you could do that already, right? Like instead of just having it not work if it's not on a development domain, you can have it just show a message saying, hey, donate, and that message goes away once they've quote unquote bought a license by giving whatever tip that you want.
Man, I hate that model. Like free apps that support themselves through ads. I don't like that model.
Well,
But
I don't mean an ad. I mean just like a.
You mean like on the front end or the back end?
No. On the back end,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so honestly, like I guess like the other thing to consider is like the way that most successful plugin developers are making money is not directly from their plugin sales. It's from the support that they give on top of it.
Right. Yeah.
So whether that's like the Joel Bradbury model, like Joel Bradbury sells it to like $50 charge, but then like he's making most of his money off of like supporting people on implementing it. And then there's the agency model, like Soul Space or Vector Media or whatever, where they have they do release plugins, but like the vast majority of the time it's supposed to be like a lead generator more than anything else.
Customizing.
So, and again, it's the same kind of thing. It's like support for plugins, but like more as a productized service that leads to a customer, client relationship kind of thing. And so we have to keep that in mind as well. Like, I don't know if the plugin store itself would be the right tool for like, connecting you with the developer on that sort of level in a way that they could actually make money off the plugin through support. But it's not a bad thing to consider. For sure. So.
Well, if there was a yearly recurring fee, I mean, that would take care of it,
What's that?
The kind of model where you have to buy it and then you have to renew it every year for support.
Yeah.
If there was a recurring fee.
Specifically, like consulting, like you need their help, like actually doing all the work. Like that would normally be your job. I don't know.
I'm really hesitant of having to explain 10 different recurring fees to a client to sell craft, though. Like you've got these 3 plugins and you've got your hosting. And here's this complex structure of what you're going to expect to pay every year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the only thing I'll say is that is the way it works in WordPress land, and they, which has kind of turned it into the norm. So it's probably not as awkward of a conversation as you might think it is. Like, if
But I think that's one of the reasons why people are leaving
Yeah.
WordPress.
there's more people joining it than leaving. 20% of the web, and that's what's kind of become the norm. So.
Yeah.
All right, folks. I think these are great conversations, and I'd love to even jump in more myself, but I'm going to push us to get into more dev topics. We've been going a while here, and I think a lot of people out there would like to learn a bit more about what's under the hood here.
I'd also just like to hear from Brandon a quick overview, like if he was talking to someone about the main reasons why you would want to move from Craft 2 to Craft 3, like what would they be? What are the the great new things in Craft 3?
Well, like before PHP 7 came along and ruined everything, the operating was you get 2x performance.
Well, that's huge. I mean, then if you
it's
do,
huge, but then PHP 7 comes along. Now it's like you get like a 2% bump or something. Like it's not. It's still faster, but it's just not nearly as like dramatically faster.
I see. So I was expecting a performance boost on top of the performance.
There is, but the point is like the PHP 7 performance boost is just so much bigger than we could do with the.
Gotcha.
That like even if it's 2x faster, it's not. But even if it was, like that still would be less significant than it is on PHP 5. So I mean, like by far, like the biggest reason you would do it, biggest sales pitch for Craft 3 specifically is just like, it's code. You gotta keep modernizing it, right? So like it's got a much more modern code base running on YouTube, which is much nicer to look at. It's all PSR, every number. It's faster. It's more scalable. It's cleaner. It's hopefully a better environment for producing plugins, and then obviously with the plugin store on top of that, a better environment for distributing and receiving, installing plugins and all that kind of thing. So it's just like there's not a grand, like, there may be when we release it, but for now there's not like a grand sales pitch like, oh, this is going to be so much better. Just like better.
Not even a sales pitch, but how would you summarize it to someone in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, it's better in a lot of little ways.
So
same reason Craft was better than Expression Engine off the bat or whatever. It's just there's no like, wow, this is amazing, as much as like it's just like every little thing is a little bit better, and it adds up to a lot.
So how about you had a talk on Craft 3 plugin development specifically that you did at Peers, and I believe that talk is still very much relevant for people like us that are looking to start developing on Craft 3 or porting our plugins and just overall getting experience with that, because I believe right now this is kind of the authoritative resource for just knowing what's under the hood or what's changed from Craft 2 to Craft 3, starting with the folder structure, how you define your classes, how you've gotten rid of attribute definitions, how you've changed how routes get registered now to controller actions, etc. So from that talk that you did to where we are today, are there some differences or some important things that you need to bring up to kind of let us know, not necessarily like what's great about us having to move to Craft 3, but what do we have to do as plugin developers to get up to speed and start porting our plugins or start developing plugins in the new platform?
Yeah, I mean, so again, like the majority of the code is still the same as it was a year ago, just because we haven't been focusing on it as much. Like the only thing we've really focused on Craft, the biggest thing we focused on in the last year is spending the last 5 months getting it caught up with Craft 2. So if you take all of what it was a year ago and then you like consider, okay, it also has all the Craft 2 features that came in 2.5 and 2.6, that's basically where we are today. Plus now, instead of config.json, it's plugin.json. So yeah, and then like the biggest change, I guess, that's happened since then is template facing. Like the whole craft.app pointing to services is pretty big. So you'll get more deprecation errors. Again, it's not breaking right off the bat, but you'll get more deprecation errors and find out that you can do things in a way that is more consistent with plugin development now, which is nice.
So a good starting point would be if you're already familiar building for Craft 2X, then you can kind of review that talk to kind of get started and then start reviewing some. Should we start like an awesome list with plugins that have been ported to Craft 3? I think that there is a Stack Overflow thing.
Here's the thing though. Here's the thing about porting plugins. Like, don't start for the sake of it, because like any plugins that were already ported, we just broke them. And like
Sure.
at the very least, they have to rename one file, and they probably have to rename some other class references and stuff. That's going to be the case up until we get to beta. Like until we get to beta, any plugins that are even released for Craft 3, like they're still probably going to break before it gets to beta. So like
Gotcha.
we're not yet encouraging people to start going back to their backlog of plugins and start porting them. Like you could do one just to try it out because you want to, with the purpose of like giving us feedback on the process. But really, like you have to remember that would be the point of it. Would be that you're doing it to help shape what Craft 3 will look like when it gets to the final release. Like right now, it is very much still everything's still very much in flux.
So, okay, well that's great. So this is a good opportunity to bring up things that may or may not necessarily be, because I think you guys have a feature request for Craft 3, right? You mentioned a feature request for Craft 3 or whatever, but specific for plugin development. Say, almost every plugin, I see the need for rendering site templates when I'm within the context of a plugin, and I have to create some sort of helper function and then switch the path or whatever to render. Would you consider some things to add to core like that, like the template helper being able to say, render plugin template or render site template? Because I don't know if that makes sense, but like when I'm, let me see, let's say that there's a front-end form that needs to be submitted, and my controller needs to handle it, and then I could render the response in my template, which is in my plugins template folder, but I might want to give the front-end user to be able to edit that template that comes back. So I might want to first see if the site template is available and render that. But then in order for that to happen, because when the request is sent, Twig is kind of like in the site's context.
So let me stop you right here. This was already addressed.
Okay.
In that too, with template modes. So I'm not sure what release it came in, whether it was 2.5 or 2.6, but but you've now got the ability to go to template service and say set template mode to control panel, and then it basically from then on, like everything acts like a control panel request, and then you can set it back to site. So take a look at that.
Okay. So that's kind of the equivalent
to.
to.
And like if you have any specific feedback like that, let us know. Now's the time.
And the Element API is as stable as 2.0 kind of is, right? Like the Element API itself,
the plugin or the like in Craft the API.
In Craft 3, like the Element API that the plugins themselves extend, you still kind of have like the similar functionality. Like you can have. I know one of the big changes was element queries or whatever. Like the element criteria model was going away or whatever. But you addressed that in your talk, so people looking at that can kind of get an idea. But were there any other things? The last time I ported a Craft 2 plugin to Craft 3. There was an issue with resources, and you said that was one of the things that you were going to have to address in Craft 3. Has that been addressed, like the way resources get served? I don't know if you can reference that far back.
Resources service still exists, but there's also asset bundles in U2.
Right.
And we're probably going to phase out resource requests because, like, in general, PHP's... I mean, I don't know. Like, we'll probably keep it around. There's probably some edge cases for it, but, like, in general, we recommend that people don't use it if they can help it. So.
Well, the issue I was having is that I was serving stuff from my plugin, and then like they were getting cached every time. Like Yi does something weird with the bundles that it actually moves that to the. I don't know if it moves it to the plugin root or to some area where it can serve them from if they're your plugin resources. But if you're it's a year ago that we had this conversation, so maybe it's been fixed.
Yeah.
So. But that was one of the big issues when I was porting.
Yeah. Take a look at it again. Bring it up in Slack. But
okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head. So. You mentioned element queries. I don't know if we want to like kind of do a segue into that at all, Ben, because that's kind of like the main thing that's.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to see a little code if you want to share some or talk about some of these bigger changes more specific.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't planning on it, but then I think just yesterday, something came up in support where it was like a real-world use case for like, oh man, if only this was Craft 3, this would be so much easier. And so I could kind of go, I've changed it a little bit and adapted it to Happy Logger a tiny bit, and it doesn't make any sense anymore, but it at least kind of illustrates what they were trying to do. So I can share my screen real quick and just kind of show, like, as a starting point, they basically wanted to select entries where let's see, they have a light switch field in one section, and they wanted to select entries that were either in a couple different sections, or they were in this third section, but only if the light switch field was turned off. So it's very like complicated condition. Like they had like this very complicated condition of like which entries they wanted to retrieve, and that's outside of the scope of what you could do with an element criterion model. So what I did, what we ended up coming with, the solution we came up with is this, where basically we recommended they create a plugin. Can you guys see my screen? I can make the text a little bigger.
You're not on your screen share.
I'm not. Oh.
We see your wonderful face.
All right. Let's see if I can get the font size bigger. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. So we ended up recommending they write a plugin that provided its own variable, and that had a function inside it. And that basically, the function inside it would basically create an element criteria model, turn that into a query, but not have it be executed yet. Just turn it into a query. So you can do this with the element service right now. You can say query equals craft.elementservice.build elements query, pass in the criteria model, and then you actually don't need to pass these things, but and then get set true, which means just IDs. So just give me the IDs back. So that gives you a DB command object, and then from there you can kind of customize it however you want. So so we did this query and where, and then we say either basically the section ID is in one of these two section IDs, or both of these conditions have to be true, or the section ID is this, and the light switch field is not enabled. Does that make sense? And then basically, like, we just return the query column result, so which basically executes the query and returns whatever's in the first column, which is all the IDs. So this is kind of the scenario we came up with, and then basically from their template, they do set entry IDs equals craft.thePluginName.get entry IDs, and then from there they pass that into a new entries query or element criteria model. So they do craft.entries, where the ID is in this entry IDs array, order by title. And the reason for this two-step process is because they were actually taking this entries thing and they were actually passing it into a paginate tag. And paginate tags need to be an element criteria model. Mm-hmm. So you can't just we couldn't have just executed the query from here, return the results of entries, and then loop through them directly in the template, or pass that to the paginate tag, because at that point it's already not an element criteria model anymore. So it's very, this was kind of like a weird two-step process we had to do. So that's kind of what we came up with in Craft 2. And the reason that this is not such a pain in the butt anymore in Craft 3 is that in Craft 3 we've kind of combined the element criteria model. So what you get when you do craft.elements.get criteria in Craft 2, the element criteria model is basically just a model, so a PHP object that stores key value pairs of parameters and values that you want to basically use to query for entries. So the limit, the section ID, the the entry type, the author ID, all those different types of things. Those are just parameters and their values on an element criteria model. And then normally, when you start looping through that, or you call the find function or whatever, it's just going to go to the element service. It's going to call this same thing, build elements query, and then it's going to execute the query and return the resulting entries. So that's what the element criteria model is as a refresher. And in Craft 2 or Craft 3, we've combined the element criteria model and the resulting query DB command object into one single object, and that's called the element query. So if I switch over to my Craft 3 project, here's the element query class. And you can kind of see if you loop through this, it's got all the same types of parameters you're used to from the element criteria model. So you've got title, slug, related to, the URI, the search ref, like all these things are pretty typical. If you look at like an extended class like entry query, you'll see that it's adding like entry specific thing, section ID, type ID, author group ID, all